journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Welcome to the Humble Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Alani Bankhead. And guys, today I'm here to ask you, how do you want to spend this holiday season and 2025? So today's going to be all about intentional living through the holidays and for the rest of our lives, because there are a lot of you out there who are living life reacting to things rather than setting an intention and building and creating the life that you want. And so we're going to talk all about that today. And it is officially December 2024. Happy December, happy holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah season, whatever it is that you celebrate. And for the last 5 years, I have actually taken as much of the month of December off to rest as possible. So this was something I discovered some years ago. I'd heard some big CEO said they did it, and I was like, what? You can do that? And what would that look like for me? And so obviously it doesn't mean that I sit around doing nothing all day, every day. But I still meet with my active clients. I'm still doing some work stuff, but I stop all proactive marketing, sales efforts. I'm not checking social media. I'm not looking at my emails. So I'm very ruthless about anything that doesn't have to do with directly serving the people that I am already serving going into December. It's going to have to wait till January. And every year I try to pick a different theme or maybe something I want to invite a little bit more of during the holiday season. And so obviously there's a lot of delicious rest happening. I have to be very intentional about that, about prioritizing my 7+ hours of sleep. This is something that post-military I was sleep deprived basically the entire time I was on active duty, and for some of it afterwards because of the types of cases that I was working. But I now understand there's a lot more science around the importance of sleep. And so self-caring and resting is something that I absolutely prioritize as much as possible in December. That includes taking naps, which if you have not taken a nap, try it out. It is magical, amazing. Even 10-15 minute snoozes are so delicious and wonderful. But this year, I actually am focusing on the concepts of awe and delight, which I'm just so excited about. Delight has been my theme for the year, and I'd honestly forgotten about it because I hadn't looked at my annual goals in a couple of months. And so bringing back this theme into my holiday season was super fun, and it was a no-brainer. And the catalyst actually was from this fall. So earlier this year, my husband and I had set up these floating candles in our entryway for the fall season. And so this was something that we thought was fun. We geek out on Harry Potter. And I saw these online, bought them. Best investment ever, by the way. They're so cute and so easy to use. And I had a friend just happen to pop by with her son. She was dropping something off, and I invited them in. And this little kiddo, he's probably about 6 years old, they were asking about them. And these lights come with a wand. So you could literally Harry Potter it up, and there's an on-off button. And so I gave him the wand and I said, push this button. And the look on his face when he did this was so magical, you guys. It was literal awe, just the shock and delight on his face that all of these floating candles just turned on. There was something in me that was triggered in seeing that beautiful little face, and I wanted more of that. And so I have decided to invite more of that in. And I love the ideas of awe and delight because much like many of you have in the past, or maybe you are right now, I lived my life just so focused on the achievement, right? Because my inner imposter told me I had to constantly be proving my worth and all that nonsense. And I'm here to tell you that there's a reason why you exist, and it's not to pay taxes, go to work, and die. Someone some years ago had made a statement to me that I felt was really profound, and I'm going to share with you today, which was we were at this restaurant. So I was overseas doing some human trafficking training, and we'd gone to dinner with the director of this office and his wife. And we're having this food at this restaurant in this beautiful foreign country. And she says, "Oh my gosh, this food is so good. This is delicious. Can you believe that God gave us taste buds?" God didn't have to give us taste buds. God could have created us with no taste buds just to ingest food for survival and to continue on living. But God loves us so much that He created taste buds so we could enjoy the food that we're eating and delight in it. And I am a little bit of a foodie. I love delicious food. It brings me so much comfort and connections, and I experience so much of other cultures when I experience their food, and I just love it so much. And so I didn't want to limit it to my taste buds, but I wanted to expand this awe and delight into other experiences as well. And it's funny because this morning I was doing my quiet time, and all the stuff I was getting through my devotionals and my quiet time had to do with light and just how light always overcomes darkness. And lights are what guide us to our destiny and stuff like that. And this idea of having 12 days of awe and delight popped up for me. And I've never done anything like this, but I figured I would give it a shot. And what I know to be true is there's the stuff that I bring to the table, and my job every day is to show up and do the very best I can with what I have. But I recognize that just me by myself, I can't really create the world solutions that I want. I have to do this in collaboration and partnership with people around me. And most importantly, I have to do this in collaboration with my higher power. And so, whatever that looks like for you, I would just invite you into asking yourself maybe what that might look like for you in this season. And so, with this 12 days of on delight, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And honestly, there was a part of me that was like, how can I manufacture this? Like, I can reverse engineer anything, I can to-do list my way to success. But there was something internally that was telling me you have to leave room for surprise. And boy, I did not think it was going to happen this fast. It's 1:20 in the afternoon when I'm recording this, and I think I had that conversation about 3 hours ago. But I just finished recording an episode with Jeff Strueker, who was in the actual Black Hawk Down incident, Mogadishu, early 1990s event that the movie famously was made after. And he's in the Army Ranger Hall of Fame. Like, this guy's resume, honestly, reading it, I was like, I'm tired. I'm tired just reading your resume. He's lived 5 lifetimes, and he's just so incredible. I can't wait to share that episode with you. It'll be February 6th that it comes out. But first of all, there were all these beautiful little breadcrumbs throughout the interview. He actually said the word awe, I think 5 or 6 times in a row. Because when we talked about how we define success outside of what the world tells us success looks like, he said, I'm just in awe when someone is courageous. I take awe in watching somebody overcome their fear and take that step, doing the thing that they know that they're meant to do. And that was my first indicator that this was a delight and awe moment. This man had me in tears on my own podcast, and it really surprised and delighted me to have that level of connection with the stories that he was sharing. Before we started recording, I wanted to be very respectful of his time. So I was talking about, I want to make sure that I'm going to get you off the podcast at exactly the top of the hour kind of thing. And he said, oh, my assistant actually put 2 hours on my calendar for this. And I was like, she did what? So shout out, girlfriend. Thank you so much for doing that. But, the fact that Jeff Strueker, who he has an abundant ministry, everybody wants his time, was generous enough to offer 2 hours on his calendar. It just chokes me up now talking about it because it's funny, speaking of courage, probably about a month ago, I was honestly a little bit whiny towards God. Us high achievers were never quite satisfied. And so I was thinking through the podcast, and it's been such a fun project to do this and to be able to dialogue with you guys on this forum. And at the same time, I was also complaining about how I'm like, oh, I want to grow the podcast and I want to have more influence just to encourage people, not influence for me, but how do I grow this thing as best as I can? And I heard God ask me, what's in your hand? And this is actually a reference to a biblical teaching where, every major biblical character, they're called to a really big that frankly they couldn't do on their own. And God equips them with something that doesn't feel like it's particularly powerful, but ends up being the exact tool that's needed for the job. And so for Moses is telling God, you want me to go tell Pharaoh to let your people go. He has a stutter. Like, this man is not super eloquent in his speech, but God uses him to be his mouthpiece. And he's like, how am I going to do it? And how am I going to convince him? And God asked him, what's in your hand? And what was in his hand was a staff. And he uses that staff to do a lot of miraculous things. There's Pharaoh's kind of court, they turn their staffs into serpents, and then Moses does the same thing, but Moses's snake eats up all the other snakes. And of course, he famously uses that very same staff to part the Red Sea, and he taps the rod on a rock and water comes out of it, right? And so whether you believe in these stories or not, God was asking me, what have I equipped you with that you already have? And when I thought about it, what I actually remembered was I was interviewed on Jeff's podcast, the Unbeatable podcast. It's super amazing. We're going to link it in the show notes so you can hear it. And Jeff, at the end of the recording, you don't hear this part, but he very graciously said, hey, I interview a lot of people. I don't say this very often. If you need anything, you let me know. And that conversation came to my mind. And I knew that I had to ask Jeff if he was willing to come on the podcast. And I had to have the courage to ask for what I needed. So this is something that we talk about a lot on the podcast and in the work that I do with my different clients. And understanding your needs and asking for what you need is one of the hardest things that you're ever going to do. But you also have to be open to receiving the incredible gifts and abundance that come as a result of you asking. And I'm getting emotional talking about this because I am so thankful that Jeff said yes for so many more reasons beyond him just saying yes. To have someone like Jeff agree to help me in my quest to encourage you guys. And y'all, this podcast episode is so good. I can't wait to share it with you. And to receive that and know that someone wanted to support me as much as I wanted to support them is so insanely humbling. And the funny thing about that is that there are so many times with my clients that we talk about their dreams and their goals. And as we dig into their stories a little bit more, the path has already been laid for them. It's almost comical. I had one person recently who she had this dream to, we'll say, work in the publishing industry. And after about an hour of a coaching session, it comes out that they have all these connections to this space that they weren't really aware of. And that these people had offered their help and she'd completely forgotten about it. And coming up with a plan where she can ask for that support to help her break into the world that she feels called to. And then also being open to receiving that help is going to be some of the hardest and most courageous things that you do. And a few hours into my 12 days of awe and delight, I find myself just completely in awe and delighted that I got to have over an hour conversation with Jeff Strueker, just talking about the miracles and the crazy things that have happened in his life. This guy is an Army Ranger Hall of Famer turned chaplain. That whole story is nuts. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Anyway, being able to receive that level of on delight so early after asking it is just more proof that my higher power provides an abundance for what we ask for. And I don't know what your relationship is like with the metaphysical or the spiritual or God or whatever it is that you choose to call it, but I think most of us in heart-centered, world-changing professions know that on some level there is something bigger than us. And I would just encourage you, if you haven't done the internal work to answer some of those questions for yourself, that it is some of the best work that you will ever do. Another thing with December is connection. So I'm very intentional about trying to connect with my family, with myself, and also with my higher power. So I am never perfect in my execution, but my goal every day is to connect with my higher power first and foremost. And doing so, I do it with the understanding that I am the vehicle for the magic. I am not the magic, but my job is to stay in close contact with the God of my understanding and just letting God work through me and the skills that I have. And old me, when I was much younger, I was constantly go, go, go. There was no time made for connection in any way, shape, or form. And over time, it's so funny. More than 20 years into my career at this point, you have some time to reflect, and we have our existential moments too of, oh, what's it all for and what's life all about and all that magical stuff. And all the epiphanies that I've had have been so obvious, but it's really funny and profound when you actually experience the reality of it, right? I remember just constantly going in my career, and in my early 20s, it was really driven by, I just want to prove myself. I want to show that I matter. I want to show that I can make a difference. I want to show that I can be a valuable member of a team. And I really wanted that connection, but I didn't really know what it looked like or felt like. And it had never really been modeled for me, not in a bad way. Nobody messed up. It's just we have new language now as compared to 25, 30, 35 years ago. And after whatever success I had, I remember just looking around being like, really? Is this it? I don't feel the way I thought I would feel reaching the quote unquote top or being successful or whatever it might be. Like, what is the point of life if I'm not thriving the way that I want? And I came to a place of understanding that, oh, actually, I think part of the purpose in life is connecting with each other. I personally think that we are all interconnected because of our souls and because of God. And I don't actually think that there's any separation between us, which I know some people might disagree with, but that's just my personal belief. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it wasn't really about proving myself to my teammates. It was about connecting with them and saying, I am someone that wants to partner and connect with you. I want to see you as you are, and I want to celebrate you and support you and have hard conversations if I need to with you. And I want the same from you back, right? I want you to have the courage to have a hard conversation with me if I need that or if I'm down to pick me up, right? And so ever since I had that realization, I think it's probably been a solid 10 years where slowly I've really been intentional about cultivating more connection with folks. And so what that might look like is being present in the midst of crazy circumstances. So a lot of the operations that I've worked in the past, since I've had this epiphany, I am very intentional about it doesn't matter how busy we are, for at least 90 seconds during every operation, I will stop, I will look around, and I will take in what's around me and I will celebrate it and be grateful for it. And those moments are the ones that they're really what are they called? It's like a moment that stays with you forever. Core memories, right? Core memories. Because I took that time to look at somebody and think, wow, this person is here with me at 2 in the morning looking for this trafficked kid, and they're giving 110% and sacrificing so much. Like, these are my people. Like, this is who I want to spend my work time with, right? And it's provided me with that thriving and joy that I want is connecting with those who are like-minded and want to create win-win situations. And they have amazing gifts that I could never exhibit on my own. They cover my weaknesses, just the gifts I bring to the table might cover some of their weaknesses. And I think that's the beauty of living in relationship with other folks. And frankly, guys, I think not I think I know post-pandemic we've really gotten away from that. And so I'm going to be very intentional about trying to connect with everybody that I interact with this holiday and moving forward in my life as well. And then with Jesus, that's the other thing. In my spiritual practice, we celebrate the birth of Jesus during Christmas. And I'm not saying that you have to practice that, but for me, having that reminder of, man, I'm so loved that despite the the bad parts of my story and the unlovable parts and maybe some of the things in my past that I'm not proud of at all. And trust me, there's plenty of that God sent somebody to completely wipe the slate clean for me and just make it so that I could be unconditionally loved. It is still pretty mind-blowing. So at least quarterly, I will look up the definition of grace. And it's unmerited favor, right? So the concept that you don't deserve the favor, but it's given anyway. And it's given not because of what you do, but because of who you are, because you exist. And initially, when I first started doing that research, it was really hard for me to wrap my head around that. I'm just like, wait, what? You don't have to prove that you've earned this incredible gift. You don't have to work your way to it. And it took quite a bit of mental gymnastics for me to stop and really come to the understanding of no, that's exactly what it means is you are loved not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And you were created perfectly and beautifully, and there's no flaw in you. And of course, there are things that maybe we need to work on, but even those flaws are part of the design for a really, really good reason. And so being intentional about sitting in the mornings with Jesus and just showing my gratitude that I get to have this crazy, messy, amazing, fun, connected, joyful life is just such a gift. And there are a lot of ways that I do this practice. It could be journaling, it could be listening to music. I love Christmas trees so much. I love the twinkling and the lights and the glitter. And it's so funny because, again, this morning, the devotionals I were getting were all about light. And the one particular verse was talking about the Magi who were tasked with going and worshiping Jesus, having the star as a guide to get them there, and how overjoyed and delighted they were when they saw that star in the sky. And for me, that is echoed throughout many themes in my household. And I have stars all over my Christmas tree. And it's just so funny because it started last year that I was just super attracted to all these ornaments that were like glittery stars and like all these things. And now it just feels like a full circle moment of this was my year of delight and thriving and fun and to have that way paved, right? Where it's like God had already primed my heart to know that the stars were going to play such a central role in this holiday season for me. So I'm super, geeky, yes, but whatever, it is what it is, y'all. Like I'm opening up my heart completely to you guys. Now, connection to family is another really important one, but I do want to be really sensitive and acknowledge that for some people, the holidays are not a fun time. It is not a joyful time. In fact, it is a painful time, and the holidays might bring up family that you've lost or family that you no longer have a relationship with. And I first and foremost want to acknowledge you in that pain because it's real. And I'm so sorry that you're having to experience it. And I've got some of that in my life as well, where there are some loved ones that I'm in difficult relationships with. And it is so tough being in those spaces because you want to be really connected with them. But oftentimes, a lot of folks haven't done the internal work to heal themselves. And unfortunately, that means that they're spewing their hurt all over you. And that's not okay either. And part of being at your very best is understanding what your self-care process looks like. And unfortunately for me, I had to make a difficult decision to really create some super hard boundaries with a couple of relationships. And is it easy? No. Is it fun? Absolutely not. It's miserable and really, really hard. But even though I second guess sometimes if I'm doing the right thing, the reality is that I'm doing the best that I can and I have to show myself grace first and foremost. But also know that I can love somebody without actually being in direct contact with them and doing the best I can to leave it out all on the field and communicating to them that I do love them very deeply while setting my boundaries is something that I'm able to do. And it does take practice, right? So, for those of you who have very difficult relationships, I want you to go into this holiday season knowing that if it were me, I would recommend you feel guilt rather than resentment and setting and enforcing those boundaries. So, what I mean is, if you feel resentment, it's because you've allowed your boundaries to get busted by people around you. And so, this is something that is within your control. But as heart centered world changers, whenever we set and enforce boundaries, it's hard for us because we love people and we want to be of service and we want to connect and we want to encourage and support. But at the same time, that guilt is a byproduct of that little imposter mechanism that says, oh, you're a bad person for not reaching out and connecting with them. That's what Christmas is all about, right? But really, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. You have to decide for yourself, what does protecting my mental health and my peace look like in this season? And so for me, for some folks, it means sending cards with very heartfelt messages, not really much contact beyond that, maybe a phone call on Christmas Day to let them know that I'm thinking about them. But that's about it. For you guys with difficult family situations, I hope that you just feel covered with joy and peace this holiday season and surround yourself with the family of your choosing, right? So your friends and your community that do love and support you unconditionally as you are, you 100% deserve it. And they are out there looking for you. So if you don't have that, I know that if you just look around, it's right there in plain sight, and you can choose to ask for those relationships as well and receive them. And then ultimately connection with myself at the end of the day as well. So again, being very intentional about, what do I want to experience this season? What ways do I need to connect with myself? What ways is God inviting me to connect with myself in new and unique ways? It's always eye-opening to examine parts of my life that I thought were healed or buried or whatever. Everything's super cyclical. So just understanding that it's just part of the process, and it's fun to discover new parts of myself or heal from something or learn something new about myself. Again, I know it sounds cheesy, but I'm just like, man, life is so crazy, insane, but it's so fun and beautiful. And I am so thankful for every little part of it. And so that's what my December looks like. It's very connective. I see a lot of cookie baking in my future, a lot of cheesy Hallmark holiday movies, and date night with my husband is something that we decided on. So weekly, we're going to be doing something just focusing on us. We have decorated the house like crazy, and we don't really do it for anybody else. We do it for ourselves because we love it. And surprisingly, we've gotten notes from neighbors that say, we absolutely love your decorations, and they bring us so much joy in the early hours of the morning when we can look across the way and see your twinkling lights. And so it's wild when you do things for yourself from a place of joy and love, not looking for acceptance. Like that community and the acceptance that you seek is going to materialize more abundantly than you could do it on your own. Which brings me to 2025. And so I mentioned that last year's words were thrive and fun. I actually accidentally threw in the word delight. Delight is my word for 2025. And I am so excited to enter into the season. It's been such a journey of just the struggle and the slaving and the fighting. And there were some great moments. There were some really, really hard moments as well. And I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but now that I've done this internal work, I understand much better how to still have joy in the midst of really difficult circumstances. And so for 2025, one of the things that I've decided to do is work on some business processes. And to me, that means I have to slow down to speed up, which is very counterintuitive in Western society. Everything has to be fast and top notch and always growing. And the idea of a tactical retreat, like we say in the military, is not ideal when it comes to business. But I know that in order for my business to do what it needs to do in 2025, I do need to slow down and straighten some things out procedurally, which I'm really, really excited about. It is much more important to me that something be done really well rather than it be a rush job. But on the flip side, there is a time and a place for, hey, if it's 80% done and it's good enough, let's get it out, right? Because we have tendencies to be perfectionists, and that's not helpful either. And then one of the other ways that I wanted to share with you that I've really benefited from in so many ways is through a practice of spiritual formation. And so this was actually something that I was exposed to for the first time at a job where the organization was primarily a Christian organization, and they had morning time of silence. So for 30 minutes every morning when folks got into the office, everybody in the organization was doing a quiet time. So it could be you're doing a devotional. Some people would walk and ponder in silence. Other people would meditate, like whatever that looked like for you. We did that for 30 minutes at the same time every day. And then there was noon corporate prayer. So everybody would come together and talk about things we wanted to celebrate or prayer requests. And we would invite outsiders into the organization to get a taste for what we did. But these were really important. And I remember I'm pretty go with the flow. Like I was like, oh, okay, it's not like wild, but whatever, I'm down. And one day the CEO of the organization, somehow I ended up in some meeting with him, and he was asking the group, does anybody know why we do these practices? And the answer ultimately came down to, it is an inconvenience to stop what you're doing at 8 a.m. and noon every day to be still or pray. And it is an acknowledgement from us that the work and the results that we do are not a result of us and anything that we do. It is an acknowledgement that God is the one who is sovereign and who creates the results. And that's part of why it's such a difficult thing for us to stop what we're doing. When you're in the middle of an email, you're almost done with that memo, right? And that really stuck with me. And one of the other things that we did was quarterly retreats. And I still do this practice to this day where once a quarter, I will go to a place. It's generally a little bit different every time, but it might be out in nature or it might be in a chapel or something like that. There's really no limit to where this could happen, but I go and I just sit quietly and I invite God to share with me what God wants my quarter or my year to look like. And it's like a spiritual download time. And it's just honestly a lot of fun. And it feels very decadent, honestly, for me to be able to take that time. And sometimes it's only 30 minutes, but sometimes it could be 1, 2, 2.5 hours kind of thing. And I get my marching orders and I proceed from there. And so I build all of these things in. So these are part of my self-care plan and me being really intentional with the work that I do. But ultimately, we're looking at a result, right? So what do I want to happen as a result of doing all of these very intentional things? And so throughout all of the podcast episodes, there's this theme of the thoughts we have lead to emotions, which result in behavior. So this is the cognitive triangle in psychology. And the theory is very simple. Once you identify what the driving thought is that creates the emotions and the behaviors that you don't want, you can change them to create the emotions and the behaviors that you do want. And thinking about the result that I want at the end of December and at the end of 2025 are the easiest ways for me to figure out what thought do I have to have if I want to have a certain result. And old me would have gone so fast through life that I really didn't have hardly any record of what it was that I experienced in the midst of the super cool opportunities I had professionally. And so one of the things that I reverse engineer is how can I be more intentional in recording and remembering these beautiful experiences because I have short-term memory issues from my PTSD stuff, and I want to make sure that I have something that I can go back to remind me of the things that I've experienced and how awesome God has been for me. Now, has this process been completely clean and perfect? No, absolutely not. Life is super messy. It is a struggle. Sometimes it's a bit of a fight to claw back that time so that I can rest, right? There's always going to be competing priorities, whether it's work or I had this amazing opportunity last December where a very well-known publication company wanted me to write an article, but I would have to do it during the month of December. And I was like, can you do it in January? And they said no. And I was like, okay, thank you for the opportunity. I referred them to some other amazing person in my network who wrote a great article. But the point being, it's really messy and there are going to be sacrifices, but to me, it's worth it. So, as an example, December, we posted on social media, my team and I, that we're closed the month of December, right? We're not taking any proactive work in. So, I love me some LinkedIn. And I had to delete it off of my phone so that I wouldn't be tempted to go in there because my fingers magically just make it to that app and I'm scrolling before I know it. And so that's an example of a boundary that I have to set in order to get the ultimate result I want, which is more of that connection and awe and the delight that I want, right? I know I have to stay out of social media if I want to be in that joyful space for me. And for you guys, all that to say, let's talk about if this has you thinking about what do I want to experience in December of 2024 and what do I want to experience 2025? One of the easiest tools is just to work backwards, right? So thoughts lead to emotions, lead to behaviors. So what is the ultimate behavior that you want to have experienced by the end of December or the end of 2025? And work backwards. So for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate, when this holiday season is over, what do you want to have experienced? And for me, it is that on delight. And so I know in order for me to experience that, I always have to connect to my higher power. So making sure that I'm doing my quiet time. And frankly, that's the only thing on my to-do list that really matters every day. As long as I do that, I've considered my day to be a success. Although, again, I'm human. I don't actually do it every single day like I want. There might be something else that comes up, but I'm a work in progress. Same thing goes for this holiday season. I'm working through, we talked about taste buds and my delight of food. How can I get through the holiday season without getting to January 1st feeling super gross from all the sugar and delicious foods that I love to eat, right? And so I have a plan identified in order to get to January 1st, having a better balance of really enjoying the foods that I love, but also sticking to my macros, tracking, and being a good steward of the one body that I have and just loving it. So, yeah, that's another example. What do you want to have experienced? Also, what emotions do you want to have felt by the time the holidays are over or 2025 has come and gone? For me, it is all about the delight and the joy. I want to feel connection. And I have done the internal work to understand what are the scenarios I have to be in order to create those emotional connections. And so I'm already thinking about a February event where Valentine's Day happens in February. Maybe I'll do something where it's all about loving ourselves, that self-love that we so easily scuff off because we're too busy loving everybody else. And it's just really fun to come up with these ideas. Same thing with the Joyful Money Club. So that starts in January. It's a group of people who, whether you're at the point where you're like, you've been avoiding your finances for forever and you need some support in getting your basic financial stuff squared away, or let's say if your finances are actually pretty decent, but you're ready to hit your next level in thriving with your finances and using it as a tool to be generous and create really thriving businesses or other professional opportunities. I'm really excited for this group of women to participate in this event because when you know you're worthy, the worth comes, whether it's tangible or intangible. And I'm super excited for the joy that's going to come out of this event. We already saw it at the 7 Levels of Money Mindset event, which had nothing to do with actual money and more to do with worth. And the Joyful Money Club is an extension of that. This group of 11 people that came this past month to the events, super incredible. And I'm honored to get to continue the journey with many of them as well. If you want to join, let me know. But also another question for you to consider is, who do you want to connect with? So who is it that you want to spend time with this holiday season? You might have to make a list and look at your calendar and plug in the days. Like on Thursday, I want to connect with June. And on Friday, I want to go have coffee with Susan. And on Saturday, I want to spend half the day with my grandma or whatever it might be. And reverse engineering your calendar and blocking off the times that you need for self-care so you're at your best, but also budgeting in the time for connection. And then everything else that's left over can go to work and have no regrets because the work is always going to be there. So reverse engineering would be my best hack for you guys. But one other thing for 2025 that I would love for you guys to consider is I want you to imagine yourself 5 years from now. What does that person look like? Write it down in detail. Like, what are you wearing? What are you driving? Where are you living? What types of work trips are you going on? Do you have a family? What kind of crazy dreams do you have that that person 5 years from now has already done? And once you can put it in 2D, so you write it down, the neuroscience tells us that once you've already created it, it's much easier for your body to go through the motions of actually making that a reality in your life. And the reality is that once you start behaving like that person in 5 years, you're actually going to surprise yourself with the outcome. So that is another tool I would highly, highly recommend. And so you guys, I'm going to close with, I wish y'all the most joyful, connected, delightful holiday season of 2024. I'm so excited for 2025. We already have a bunch of episodes in the hopper. I have some incredible guests. We have cybersecurity experts, communication warriors, diplomats. I already mentioned we have Pastor Jeff Strueker from Black Hawk Down is on the podcast, and many, many more amazing people whom I deeply admire and respect. Thank you so much for being along this journey. We're post-Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful for you guys and for your courage and wanting to live the biggest, baddest life in service of other people. And I'm here to support you guys. I love you guys. If you have any comments, questions about what you think about this podcast, please comment on YouTube or go to any of my socials on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn and comment. I will get back to you in January with any responses, but I love you guys. I'm so proud of you. Keep going, humble warrior, and I will see you very soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at alani@mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI@mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.